Valentin Bondarenko is on day 10 of a 15-day experiment. Low-pressure chamber, oxygen-enriched atmosphere. He finishes his work, wipes biosensors off his skin with an alcohol-soaked cotton swab, tosses it without looking. It lands on the electric hot plate he used to make tea. In 50% oxygen, his wool suit caught fire before anyone could react. He died 16 hours later, without ever getting close to a rocket. March 23, 1961. 6 years later, the same mechanism, pure oxygen, flammable material, spark, killed Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee inside Apollo 1 during a ground test. The difference? Apollo 1 was at least on a launch pad. Bondarenko was in a lab. The first danger in space exploration isn't the vacuum. It's the simulation of space. The room where you practice dying. A launch vehicle is not a vehicle. It's a controlled detonation you're sitting on top of. During the first 8 minutes after liftoff, astronauts absorb up to 3 G, 3 times their body weight, pressing them into the seat while the rocket burns tons of propellant at temperatures that melt steel. October 24, 1960. Baikonur Cosmodrome. Marshal Nedelin needed a launch before the anniversary of the Bolshevik Revolution. A gift for Khrushchev. The R-16 had problems. Proper procedure? Drain the fuel and repair it. Nedelin ignored it. A miskeyed command fired the second stage engine with 150 engineers standing nearby. The explosion was seen 30 miles away. 120 dead. Nedelin was identified by his medal. Challenger took 73 seconds. 1 O-ring, the width of a wristband. The crew cabin didn't explode. It separated intact and fell for 2 minutes and 45 seconds. 4 of the 8 emergency air packs were manually activated during the fall. Launch is the shortest phase of the mission, and statistically, one of the deadliest. You have exactly 9 to 12 seconds of useful consciousness after the cabin loses pressure. After that, oxygen in your tissues begins to fail. In environments below the Armstrong limit, about 12 miles of altitude, the water in your body's tissues starts to vaporize and form bubbles. It's called ebullition. You swell. Your blood vessels seize. At 30 seconds, circulatory failure. At 90, no coming back. June 30th, 1971. Soyuz 11 had completed 22 days in space, a flawless mission. During module separation, a pressure equalization valve opened early. Dobrovolsky, Volkov, and Patsayev weren't wearing pressure suits. Nobody required it for that phase of the flight. The capsule landed automatically. When the hatch was opened, all 3 were in their seats, eyes closed, like they were asleep. In 1966, a NASA technician was accidentally exposed to vacuum inside a test chamber. He remembered one thing before losing consciousness: the feeling of his saliva boiling on his tongue. The chamber was repressurized. He came to. He went to lunch. Decompression doesn't hurt. It doesn't scream. It's the silence that kills you. In space, fire doesn't rise. Without convection, without gravity pulling heat upward, flames go spherical, burning in every direction at once. Cooler, slower. But you can't tell which side is coming for you. What kills you first isn't the flames. It's carbon monoxide. In a sealed cabin, the smoke has nowhere to go. You lose consciousness before you ever feel the heat. Apollo 1, pure oxygen atmosphere at 16 pounds per square inch. The fire spread in 17 seconds. Velcro, nylon, foam. In pure oxygen, everything burns. Everything. The hatch opened inward. It took 5 minutes to open it from outside. After Apollo 1, NASA redesigned the hatch, changed the atmosphere, and listed 200 safety overhauls. 3 deaths to learn what seemed obvious in hindsight. CO2 builds up when the scrubbers can't keep pace. First symptoms: headache, confusion, impaired judgment. Exactly the faculties you need to recognize the problem and fix it. Apollo 13, 1970. The lunar module was used as a lifeboat. Problem: the lunar module's CO2 filters were round. The command modules were square. Incompatible. The crew built an adapter out of cardboard, duct tape, plastic bags, and a sock. It worked. For 4 days, that improvised fix kept 3 astronauts alive. Radiation is more patient. High-energy particles from distant supernovas pass through the hull of the spacecraft like it isn't there. They pass through you, too. Apollo astronauts reported seeing flashes of light with their eyes closed. Galactic cosmic ray particles shooting straight through their retinas. The problem? Conventional shielding is useless against galactic cosmic rays. You can absorb enough to significantly raise your risk of cancer, cataracts, and neurological damage, and feel absolutely nothing. CO2 feels like sleep. Radiation feels like nothing. Both kill in total silence. More than 25,000 objects larger than 4 inches are orbiting Earth right now. Estimated particles between ½ an inch and 4 inches, 500,000. Particles larger than a millimeter, over 100 million. All of them traveling at hypersonic speeds, averaging 22,000 miles per hour. A 1-centimeter fragment hitting the ISS at orbital velocity releases energy equivalent to a hand grenade. A 4-inch object, comparable to 15 pounds of TNT. The ISS has had to maneuver to avoid debris more than 40 times since 1999. When a maneuver isn't possible in time, the crew retreats to the docked Soyuz capsules and waits, ready to evacuate if the object strikes the station. The Kessler syndrome. A single cascade collision could generate enough debris to make low Earth orbit impassable for decades. Not an explosion, an accumulation. A gravitational trap that closes itself. You don't see what kills you. It's moving faster than any warning system. July 16, 2013. Luca Parmitano has been outside the ISS for 45 minutes when he feels something unusual at the back of his helmet. Water. Cold. Building up. In microgravity, water doesn't run. It floats and wraps around you. It kept rising until it covered his eyes, his nose, his mouth. Parmitano had to make it back to the airlock, guided only by memory and the safety tether. Unable to see, unable to hear clearly, in the darkness of orbital shadow. 1 to 1.5 liters of water inside a helmet in the vacuum of space. If the tether snaps during an EVA, you drift. The safer, an emergency jetpack, carries fuel for very limited maneuvering. No guarantee of return. Temperature outside the ISS, plus 250 degrees Fahrenheit in direct sunlight, minus 250 degrees Fahrenheit in shadow. The suit holds 72 degrees Fahrenheit through a single system. 1 failure point. If any suit component fails, decompression. 90 seconds. A 6-hour EVA outside the ISS is the highest risk activity an astronaut performs. Parmitano lived to tell the story. Not every scenario ends that way. Not a fast death. Bones, heart, sands, kidney stone with no surgeon available. Without gravity, the body starts dismantling what it spent a lifetime building. Bones. Average loss of 1 to 2% of bone mass per month. Heart. Without gravity to push against, it atrophies like any underused muscle. It becomes more spherical, loses volume, works less, gets weaker. Cerebrospinal fluid, normally distributed throughout the body, shifts upward toward the head. Intracranial pressure rises. It can cause permanent vision loss, a condition called SANS. Spaceflight-associated neuroocular syndrome. Some astronauts came home with irreversibly compromised eyesight. Calcium released from bones forms kidney stones. A kidney stone in space, with no surgery available, is a life-threatening emergency. Dormant viruses reactivate. Herpes, chickenpox. Diseases that have been sleeping wake up because the immune system, without earthly pathogens to fight, weakens. Microgravity isn't a single kill mode. It's a condition of constant deterioration that creates multiple kill modes running simultaneously. In 2019, A NASA astronaut aboard the ISS accessed their ex-partner's bank account back on Earth, the first alleged crime committed in space. The most disturbing part isn't the crime itself, it's what it reveals. After months of extreme confinement, in an environment where every decision carries real physical consequences, judgment can deteriorate in ways nobody sees coming. NASA classifies isolation and confinement as factors that degrade sleep, decision-making, and crew operational performance. On Mars, communication delay of up to 30 minutes each way, no emergency evacuation, no real-time psychological support, no second opinion on the roughly 40 critical decisions made each day. In an environment where every call matters, a crew member in psychological collapse can be more dangerous than any hardware failure. February 1st, 2003, 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Columbia was 16 days into its mission when it entered the atmosphere over the Pacific coast. On launch day, 16 days earlier, a piece of foam from the external tank had punched through the leading edge of the left wing. Engineers requested satellite imagery to assess the damage. The Department of Defense offered spy camera access. NASA declined. The reasoning? Foam had broken off on previous missions without incident. The Columbia Accident Investigation Board later called this normalization of deviance, the process by which an organization gradually accepts risk because nothing bad has happened yet. When Columbia entered the atmosphere at 12,500 miles per hour, gases at 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit tore through the breach in the left wing and destroyed it from inside. The orbiter broke apart over Texas in 16 minutes. Re-entry G-forces can reach 8 G on emergency ballistic trajectories. Astronauts, after months of microgravity, brittle bones, atrophied muscles, absorbing 8 times their body weight without being able to lift their arms. Challenger was 73 seconds. Columbia was 16 days earlier, when nobody wanted to look. Astronauts returning from 6 months on the ISS often can't walk on their own. The body that spent months adapting to a gravity-free environment no longer recognizes solid ground. It doesn't know how to stand anymore. 2019. A NASA astronaut on the ISS developed a blood clot in the internal jugular vein. It had never happened before in spaceflight. NASA treated it with blood thinners administered on board. Because evacuation wasn't an option, and because getting it wrong wasn't an option either. The cancer risk can show up years or decades after landing. No immediate symptoms. Accumulated radiation does its work quietly in the years that follow. Some effects are carried in mutated genes. They don't just skip one generation. They can appear in your children, in your grandchildren. Space doesn't end when you land. It just stops being visible. 188 people have died in incidents related to spaceflight since 1961. None of them died from space. They died from too much oxygen, too little oxygen, CO2, fire, pressure loss, foam, O-rings, water in a helmet, politics, and deadlines. Space has no intention. We do. That's where the real danger lives.